Do you ever feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or stressed? It may be time to set boundaries for your mental health. So in this video, let's explore ways that you can set boundaries to protect your mental health.
And trying to remain so strong. I know it's good if I'm wrong. I got it. I gotta go. Running.
Hi, my name is Deeanna, and if you haven't seen me before, I make videos about mental health and lifestyle. Mental health is on a Monday and lifestyle and more fun content is on a Friday. So yeah, this is me, and today I'm going to be talking about boundaries and ways to set boundaries, and also how I personally have been setting boundaries within my life. So I'm going to give you some real world examples. So first of all, let's talk about what a boundary is. A boundary is like a mental fence, a barrier if you like, to protect yourself and your mental well-being in times of stress. It's also there to kind of preserve what you want and what you need in order to be able to thrive and function. Boundaries also define what is acceptable and what is not acceptable within our personal, work, and in our relationship lives. They provide a sense of safety and help us to have this sort of balance within our lives. And if you can agree with me, we all need this in our lives. We all do. It helps our mental health, it helps our physical health, it helps every sort of thing that you could imagine that helps you to function. So now getting on to you. Let's firstly identify what your needs are within your life and also what you want to happen within your life. What do you think that you need to make yourself feel mentally well? I'll give you some time to reflect on this, and I will talk about some of the things that I personally have set in terms of boundaries. For me personally, I needed to set boundaries in terms of lending money. I myself am not in the best financial position, and I needed to say to myself, wait, stop. The people you're lending money to, you need to try and look out for yourself. And for number one, you also need to set the boundaries in terms of being able to lend versus wanting to lend. So being able to lend is different than wanting to lend. You can easily want to lend to somebody, you can want to lend them money, but being able is the main factor here. And I was struggling to realise the difference between ability and wanting to. So I want to lend to the people that I was previously lending to, but I'm not able to. So that's the big difference. It's, looking at sort of my financial situation, looking out for myself, because at the end of the day, if everyone was to get up and leave in my life, which I've experienced a lot of that, then I'm going to only have myself. I'm only going to have me as the sole person. So I've got to look out for myself, and I may want to lend money to other people because I'm just a kind, nice person, but at what expense? And I was putting my own financial situation at expense to be able to lend to this said person and persons that I was lending to. So setting that boundary for me was very important. So I hope whatever boundaries that you've thought of have, kind of come into your mind, and you've got maybe wrote a note down to kind of figure out what sort of boundaries you think you need to set. Now, next step is to communicate these boundaries clearly, assertively, but also in a polite manner. So for example, with me and lending money, I basically said to this person, I said, I'm really sorry, but due to my own financial situation and the need for me to set boundaries for my mental health, I am going to be unable to lend you any more money. And that was giving them a sole reason, and also saying, I'm setting boundaries for my mental health. I'm also not able to lend you money. It's not that I don't want to, but it's that I'm not able to. And that was something that I had to sit down and talk with this person about. And yeah, it was hard. It was a difficult conversation, but ultimately they respected my decision to set this boundary. So another example of this that you may have, that I personally haven't really experienced because I don't have a huge social life, is that after work you may be invited to a night out, but you yourself know that having those few extra hours of sleep will help you to avoid burnout. So communicating respectfully to your colleagues to say, I'm really sorry, I would love to join you guys, but I know that for my own mental health and well-being, I need to head home now. You don't need to say, I need to go to sleep. It could be something else that's going on in your life. You could need to get home for children, or you could need to get home to see your spouse. It's completely different. Obviously, I'm not in that sort of situation. Like, that's not my situation. So therefore, I use the word sleep and the excuse of sleep. But you could just say, like, I need to head home now. You don't need to, excuse yourself as to why you need to head home, but you can just say, I need to head home. But my biggest bit of advice is remember that it's okay to say no. Remember that it's okay to say to somebody else, I'm really sorry, I can't. And remember that no is a very powerful word. No is one of the most powerful words in like your mental health. It's the best tool that anyone can have. Saying no and, you know, sticking by your guns. And you're doing this for your own mental health. It doesn't matter whether you want to do something or you need to do something. You're looking at your mental health and you're putting yourself as a priority, which is the most important thing in life. So going through all of this, it doesn't mean that setting boundaries is easy. It doesn't mean that setting boundaries is something that you can just flick on the switch and it will happen overnight, because it won't. Setting boundaries takes a long time for you to figure out what you want to set as a boundary, but ultimately what is fair to both you and the other person. So you might kind of, you know, test the waters with boundaries, and you may look at boundaries and you may think, oh, you know, I'm going to try setting this boundary, and then you might receive, I don't know, some negative feedback. So you might just, I don't know, slightly like tweak the boundary. Doesn't mean you take the boundary away. It just might mean that, for example, if you're going out with colleagues and, you know, you want to go home, but you're able to spend an extra hour with them, you might go out for an hour, but then excuse yourself early from the evening to protect your own mental health. It's kind of like that. It is obviously not with all boundaries can this be like tweaked, but looking at how you feel in it, the situation, and also protecting the relationships with yourself and others, and, you know, sort of just like testing how you feel by setting that boundary. It's important to be mindful of your limits. It's important to sit there and, you know, say to yourself, mentally and physically, what are my limits? I myself, you know, I said to one of my employers recently that I wanted to do 3 days a week, and, you know, this has been affecting my job opportunities within this realm, and so I'm having to tweak my boundary. I'm having to, you know, for like weigh up the situation. So if I am doing 3 days a week, they are, you know, at the point where they're saying, well, we can't facilitate you doing 3 days a week. And it got me really angry. Like, I'm not going to lie, it takes a lot to get me angry. You ask any of my friends, it takes a lot to get me angry. But it basically was very hard for me, because this boundary that I was putting in place that was for 3 days a week was because of my own physical health. I have chronic lower back pain, and so that was the reason for having this boundary in place. You know, 3 days a week would provide me with enough income throughout the summer and throughout the rest of my employment, but like, you know, 3 days a week was then causing them to say that, you know, we don't need you for this week, because they couldn't facilitate me only doing 3 days a week, because it would then leave them short for the extra 2 days or the extra 3 days, or, you know, whatever days they were needing staff. So ultimately it became a bit heated of a discussion and a little bit difficult for, I'm assuming, both parties. But it was very difficult for me to then calm down afterwards. And ultimately I had to say to the employer, I had to say, well, I'm going to need to do 5 days, because if I, you know, 5 days is usually the minimum that they want you to do, and like that's per week, and I didn't want to do 5 days because of my health, but I'm gonna have to do it, because otherwise they're gonna keep cancelling me. And this is no disrespect to, you know, the company. Obviously I'm not going to mention the company, but this is no disrespect to the company. It is just, you know, it was dealt with very poorly. And also, like, at the beginning of my employment, they hired me on the basis of knowing that I wanted to do 3 days, and then they turned around and they said, you know, they've cancelled me for 2 weeks in a row basically. And I was not happy, because just saying that we don't need you anymore was very disheartening, because I love the job that I, you know, was employed to do. And at the end of the day, I was employed to do this job. Like, if you think that 3 days a week is going to impact the ability to have me and the ability that you might need to cancel me, then make me aware of that at the very start. Like, it's not hard to say to the person, we can try and facilitate 3 days, but it may be quite hard to facilitate 3 days, because at the end of the day, we need to find someone to fill the extra days that you're not there. And, you know, being upfront and honest, I was upfront and honest as to the reason why I wanted 3 days. And yeah, it just became quite a difficult discussion. So don't be afraid to set stronger boundaries. I'm lucky with this job that I've just mentioned. It is only a semi-permanent job. It is something that is got a time frame to the contract, so it's not something that I'm going to have to take into the long term. If it was something in the long term, I'd probably be looking for something else, but luckily it's not. And so therefore I was able to basically say, you know, let the reins loose a little bit and just deal with it for the term of the contract, and then basically review how I'm feeling sort of throughout that. Luckily I have a really amazing manager who is, you know, sort of able to support me. She is aware of everything, and she is, you know, fully aware that, you know, she may need to step in and provide some extra support, and she's happy with that. She is happy to, you know, provide the support that I ultimately need in order to have this employment, because she's also kind of ish aware of my financial situation and the fact that I don't have disposable income. So, you know, she is happy to support me. It was more the HR that the discussion was with, and the difficult discussion that I was left feeling quite angry and annoyed and frustrated by, you know, their lack of communication at the start of the contract, because ultimately I could have decided not to take the contract if I was aware of the situation, which I obviously wasn't. But lastly, it's important that for you to set your boundaries. You know, set your boundaries and enforce your boundaries. So enforce them and say to the person, that is it, I'm setting this boundary, that is it. You know, if it's like, I'm not going out, you know, they might go to you, oh please come out of a weekend, or please come out and do this, and you have to say, no, I'm sorry, like, you know, I need to go home, or I need to go and do some errands, or I need to do X, Y, and Z. And setting that boundary is key for your mental health, but also, you know, just to make sure that you are like maintaining that good work-life balance. So please remember that setting the boundaries is going to be the most difficult part. Enforcing them is going to be probably on the same lines of setting the boundaries, but once the boundaries are there and once the other party respects those boundaries, it will get easier and easier. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more content that is about self-improvement and improving your life and your mental well-being. I'm going to end today's video here, as I always do, so please remember that I believe in you even if nobody else does, and I shall see you in my next one. Bye.
Just like you're young again, no, don't you cry. Just get back up again.